13 is a brand founded for the creators, the innovators, and the motivators, for the people who get up every single day and strive to be better and leave a positive mark on this world. 13 is a fantastic clothing company, and the people that are behind it are passionate, creative, and some of the nicest people I have ever met. All of their stuff looks great, it's comfy, all the designs are so super cool. 13 has some of my favorite t-shirts and seriously my favorite pair of sweatpants I have ever worn. 13 has been a long-time sponsor and supporter of the Cory cast, and they wanted to extend their love to you, the listener. So when you check out their website at thur13en.com, fill your cart with some cool hats, hoodies, sweatpants. Just make sure you use the code word CoryCast at checkout and you're going to save yourself a little bit of money. thur13en.com. Make sure you tell them Cory sent you. My guest today is Rebecca Mountain, a high-performance coach, best-selling author, and a public speaker. I was introduced to Rebecca when I saw her speak at a Howard Hanna convention, and I really felt like her story was moving. It was fantastic and really inspiring. She originally was raised in a cult, which first time I have ever met anybody who was raised in that type of environment. So it was really eye-opening to hear her experiences and what she went through. Rebecca shares her life lessons and how to help people overcome the dragon of their brain. Rebecca is inspiring, she's creative, she's really damn funny, and I think you are gonna really get a kick out of this conversation. Rebecca Mountain, a author, public speaker, business coach also?
You got it.
You are a woman of a lot of different hats. And I know I'll probably say it in the intro, but I first saw you speak at a Howard Hanna event, and you're talking about your new book that you released, The Dragon versus the Goat. And I felt it was a really powerful message. So I was like, you should come on the podcast, talk about your book, because it is really cool. I love the mentality. What was the process like starting that book?
Well, the process started from me trying to really understand, because as a business coach, I'm a high performance coach, right? So whether it's leadership or relationships or building a business, making more money, being less stressed, like that's the kind of coaching that I do. But so often my clients would, we'd have a session, rah, 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 they're going to go do it. A week or two later when they come back and I'm like, so how'd it go? Like, what were your results? And they're like, yeah, kind of didn't do it. And I'm like, God. So I got really tired of that. And so I decided to do some research into why people don't do the work they're supposed to do. Like where is the root cause? Because it's not in time management. It's not in motivation or confidence or anything. It's just like, it's something else. It's not even fear. So as I was going down the rabbit hole and getting closer and closer to the answer, which I got, what I came to understand was that there are actually two warring factions. There's a conflict that we're constantly engaged in every single minute of every single day. On one side is what I've called the dragon. It's actually your lizard brain. It's evolutionarily speaking the oldest part of your brain, but lizard really wasn't scary, so I called it a dragon because I thought that was way cooler, right? Way cooler. Like as soon as everyone's like, "Oh my god, my dragon!" I'm like, no one's gonna go like, "Oh my god, my lizard."
The gecko versus the sheep.
Exactly. So it's either like this weird iguana with this like wiggly thing, or it's like a tiny little gecko. Really not frightening. I needed it to be scary, right? So it's the dragon part of our brain, which is where like fight, flight, freeze come from. Fawn, so people pleasing. It's where our comfort zone is. It's where the contrast effect, which we cannot turn off, which is comparing ourselves to others. I do a lot of work in real estate, and it is so hard for people to like not go like, but they're succeeding and they're doing blah, blah, blah. So maybe I should just go and do that. Right. So as opposed to thinking about what works for them, which is where the goat comes in, which is, of course, greatest of all time. So the dragon and the goat are the two sides. And the goat is how we're wired, how we're set up to operate, what makes us really comfortable, and what makes us get to that point where instead of being like all hunched up and anxious about what we're doing in our day, you kind of have that feeling of like, oh, I can do that. And that's the ticket. Like I had a conversation with someone yesterday and literally she started up with her like shoulders around her ears. And I'm like, dude, like, wow. And the worry and the, what if, what if, what if? And that's the dragon talking. And it's really loud and it's reflexive and we can't turn it off. But where the goat comes in is throughout the conversation, we start imagining a different world, a different setup for her business and her role. And by the end of the conversation, she's like, this sounds amazing. So it's that taking people from not worrying about the future, but instead saying, let's see how this goes. Not worrying, am I going to have the answer or not? But just saying, I'll figure it out. Moving, so decreasing the intensity and the volume of this dragon that is always trying to push back, don't make mistakes, don't look like an idiot, if someone's going to call you a dumbass or something like that, and just kind of challenging those thoughts to say, are they true? Is it fact or is it fiction? And then saying, let me redesign my life, my business, my relationships, and all that kind of a thing so that it works for me. Like I'm autistic, which I only found out like last year. That was a revelation. Explains a lot, right? Explains why, like I can't do office politics and why I kept getting fired because I just like, I couldn't read the room. Like there was no room that I could go in and like take the temperature of and then adjust. I just go in.
It's weird though, Rebecca, you're saying that, but like you're working with individuals and you're able to read that person who was like really tense and like tight it up, but you couldn't read the temperature of a room.
Nope, because
it's
I need
individual.
Words. I need words, right?
Yeah.
Because I can read the pattern in the words. So as soon as someone starts talking, that part of my brain kind of kicks in, and now I start seeing patterns, right? So, and that's an autistic brain, pattern recognition. Often, like people who have autism are really good at pattern recognition. They're good at math. They're good at like, and I have like when I did psychology tests. They always ask me if I was cheating or lying because I'm equally creative and analytic, right? So that's just very rare and there's all these explanations for it. But yeah, so when I work with people, the way that like what I'm doing right now is so different from what I was doing 5 years ago. 5 years ago, I was running a social media agency, running Facebook ads and Instagram content, all the social networks and newsletters and automation and blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. Worked 90 hours a week. I was good at it, but I wanted to shoot everyone categorically every day.
Yeah.
Right. And, take
That's
my
a
phone.
Stressful day.
It is because it's all accept or reject. And that's actually, as I've learned over the years, one of my biggest problems. And I just like rejection is a big part of my past, which we'll get into, like growing up in a cult, right? Because, the shame and the fear that goes into like, you're always trying to follow the rules. And quite frankly, get fucking it all up. And so I'm like, I'm kind of screwing it up all over the place. Anyway, so like 4 years ago, I'm like, you know what? Fuck this. I don't want to do this anymore. But what do I want? And what I started to do was say, what am I good at? What kind of a life do I want? What schedule do I want to work? And quite frankly, I'm pretty damn lazy because I don't actually do much work. I get on the phone, I talk to my clients, we figure stuff out, and then they go off and do work and I go have a nap, I have a sandwich, right? It's not up to me, it's up to them, right? I need to be a good coach to encourage them and give them the sight and the insights to be able to go do it. But I'm not really doing a lot of work. I did consulting at the beginning when I started doing this, my high performance coaching. And I decided that, that was too much work. I didn't want to do it. Like I have ideas, but I'm like, I don't really feel like teaching it.
But you much prefer like that person to person coaching?
Yep. I love to see the journey. Like I love to take someone from, I have one client, she was so worried about what other people would think of her, right? She's this massive dynamo, amazing woman, sold about 17 million in real estate, town of about 20,000. So it's not like a big city. Within a year, she was at 33 million. She paved her driveway. Like, and that was a big thing because she's like, oh no, what's everyone gonna think? I mean, they're gonna think you have a nice driveway, but she was
Yeah.
all like, they're gonna think, oh, she's flaunting her money, and she
Right.
thinks, nope, they're gonna think you have a nice fucking driveway. And
Yeah.
so, she paved the driveway, got the Escalade, and by the end of the year, she had this giant billboard of like, I'm number one, bitches, right? And I'm just like, it didn't say that, but like I read that in there, and I'm
Yeah.
like, yes, right? And now she's getting on stage and she's writing a book, and I'm like, woo woo, right? So these are the kinds of things that give me energy, and that's the whole design of the dragon and the goat. Take your dragon. It's not slay the dragon because we kind of need the reptilian part of our brain. It's, important for heartbeat, breathing, balance. So you don't want to like slay the dragon. That's why it's always called shrink the dragon to its most important functions, right? So,
You got to live
because,
with it.
well,
Got to
that's
live
just
with
it.
it.
You got to cope with it. You got to know how to interpret it. You got to never let the dragon brain overcome the thinking and logic brains, because we have several brains on top of each other as we've evolved as humans, right? We've got that brain, which is instinctive. It's like someone throws an axe, you duck without thinking about it, right?
Right.
But, so it's very reflexive, but it can really get us in a lot of trouble if the emotions get too high. And then it actually cuts off any brain activity in the parts of our brain that actually think things through, right? And challenge, like, should I do that? Should I be angry? Should I shoot my mouth off? Should I sue that person? Right? Can I, so it's about creating balance between that, but also the courage to design a life that you want. So that's a very long
How do
answer
you
to a really quick question.
how can someone like, how does the goat beat the dragon essentially?
So the goat beats the dragon when you don't let the dragon take over, right? So you have an emotional experience about something, and we have emotional experiences like all day long. We see something on Facebook that makes us feel bad. We have an argument with our spouse. We have, tricky conversations, or we have really cool stuff happening to us. If we don't control the emotional side of us, right? So you can't stop it, but you can learn to control it. Once you get that down to its, again, the most basic and important functions, then all of your brain is working and you get clarity. And that's when the goat is winning. The goat is winning when you're like, I know who I am, I know what works for me, and I'm designing and living a life based on my boundaries of what I say is okay or not okay. I'm protecting it, I'm communicating it. And every day I wake up and I'm like, damn, I love what I'm doing. Like every day, like when I woke up today, I was looking forward to this. I've got a whole bunch more calls today, and I can't fucking wait. I cannot wait
Yeah.
to get these calls underway, because I know that I'm just doing what I absolutely love, right? Whereas
Right.
when I looked at my agency, I was just like, I got like 2 more years in me, and then I'm gonna like, walk off into the
Yeah.
sunset.
I
Whereas
feel you.
this job, yeah, and but this job, the one I have, you're in your goat world when you're like, I don't even know if I want to retire. I don't even know if I want to step away from this. How do I fill more of my day with this stuff,
Yeah.
but also having that balance? So I went from working 90 hours and now I work, I don't know, 30 to 35, but I make 5 times as much money and I
Right.
work by myself.
That was my thing too. I worked in retail before I got into real estate, and it was
Ooh.
just like, I was the same way. It was just like
Mhm.
day after day, I just felt like it was a carbon copy of what I did the last
Mhm.
day. And then in retail, you're worried about seasons, so it's like I got used to like, all right, September, we got to start thinking holiday, and like I
Mm.
got in this rhythm where I like dreaded it. But now I'm
Mhm.
in a career that when I wake up, I'm like excited. Like
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
genuinely excited to work and show houses and work
Mhm.
directly with people. It's a weird balance. And you had said earlier, like it's hard with the comparison. That's the one
Mhm.
thing I struggle in real estate is a constant comparison to other people of who's doing the most, they did more than me, or I'm not doing well enough. And
Mhm.
when I kind of take a step back and look at it entirely, I'm like, I am a lot better off than I was in retail. Not that
Yeah.
there's anything wrong with that job. I don't think I was
It's just not for you. Yeah.
totally not meant for that.
Mhm.
It's a weird balancing act that some people have to do, you know?
Mhm, mhm, and the contrast effect, the way, because I, there's a couple strategies for contrast effect avoidance or management, because it's more management than avoidance, because again, it's instinctive. You can't turn that part of your brain off. You pull up to someone beside you at a stoplight, you're comparing your car to them, whether they think you are better looking than them or not, right? How dirty their car is. Like, so there's all that kind of a thing. So to manage it, there's a couple of things that I do. First of all, if social media triggers it, unfollow them. You can still check into them, but don't let it be a part of your daily feed, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes there's triggers we can't suppress, we can't avoid, like I did. I mean, I love these people, but I would compare myself against them like constantly, and I'm like, oh, maybe I should do that. I'm like, no, Rebecca, you tried that and it bombed. So don't get a team because you don't like it. I just don't. I mean, some people thrive in it, and I'm like, don't, please,
Yeah, me
nobody
too.
work for me. People have
Yeah.
come to me and say, Rebecca, can I work under you? And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
And I don't like working in an office. I don't feel lonely. That's, again, I understand now that's part of my autistic brain, where I'm just like, I don't have a lot of friends, but I don't feel lonely. And so why feel pressured to work in a workspace just because everyone else is doing it? All I would want to do, I would just get annoyed by them. Anyway, so one of the things is to reduce the triggers. But I know I don't play well in the sandbox. It's quite terrible. I can tell you some performance reviews that I got, like when I was actually working in corporate Canada. They're pretty colorful. Anyway, so then the other thing that I did, so with these people that I just can't get out of my feed, like they just keep fucking coming in, I said to myself, okay, in order to manage the contrast effect, if I see it and my immediate thing is like jealousy or envy, I'm going to go and I'm going to comment and I'm going to celebrate that person. Because if I'm celebrating that person, I'm not tearing them down and I'm not tearing myself down, right? I'm like, good for you. Well done. Knock it out of the park. And that has allowed my brain to, because I'm saying something positive and I'm really trying to feel it. And it was a bit of a struggle because I'm like, oh, good for fucking you. No.
Yeah, right,
Good for you. Take out the
right.
fucking, right?
Yeah.
So, look like you mean it. But what
How
that
many times
has,
did you have to do that until it felt
probably
natural?
100.
Yeah, yeah.
But you just keep going because it's building new synapses in your brain, right? New neural pathways. Because if you get into a really anxious or envious or jealous or angry kind of a habit, it's just a neural loop that you get stuck in. So you need to kind of fire those guys from that neural pathway and start helping them dig a trench in another direction. But it takes effort at the beginning. So sometimes, yeah, you don't feel it, but you do it, because if you do it, eventually your brain's going to catch on that that's how you manage the whole idea of feeling inferior or envious or blah 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 about somebody else. And it starts to then shrink that part of your brain, like it literally physically shrinks the amygdala, which are two little almond shaped bad boys, kind of like right behind your eyeballs, halfway down your head. And so the more anxious you are, the more angry you are, the more emotionally unregulated that you are, the bigger your amygdala is going to be. So all of these emotions are going to take you over. Your anxiety is going to be high. So in the book, I have 20 strategies that you can use, all or one, doesn't really matter. The more you use, obviously, the better results you're going to get. But in 8 weeks of practicing some of these exercises that take minutes in a day, your amygdala actually physically shrinks between 10 to 20%,
Is
which
that your
calms.
formula that's you call the goat
The
path?
goat path. Yeah. I call it the life train in the book, and I really hated it. So I'm going to I'm like, can I send a note to everybody? Please scratch out anytime you
Yeah.
see life train. Change to goat path.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what that is an explanation of how we actually change our reality. Because a lot of people are like, I don't really like what's going on in my life. So I'm going to work harder, hustle, grind, work 90, 100 hours a week and all that kind of a thing. And you think that if you do that for long enough, eventually you'll have to stop. Well, it's true, you'll stop because you're going to drop dead, right? So, not a really cool path. So, again, part of my research in putting this book together is how do we really go about changing today? So, when I looked back on, I'm running an agency, I'm running out of steam, I'm running out of joy, right? I have everything around me that should make me happy. So why am I miserable? I look back, I worked hard. So that was not the issue. I'm not a stupid person and I work really, really hard, but I'm not getting what I want. So then with my research, what happens is what we believe is how we act. So if we believe we're not good enough, We're comparing ourselves to others, and we're like, oh, everyone's so much further ahead than me. I hear that a lot from my clients, when we start out. Or you just get stuck in like past traumas and dramas and old ways of thinking, like nobody wants to listen to me. Nobody cares about me. I'm stupid, blah, blah, like all these different things. If you say enough of that to yourself, you create a belief system, which is how you see the world. Like if you go into a meeting, say there's like a group of people that you're meeting and you're like, oh my God, they're going to think I'm stupid. You will find all the proof in the world of that. You will see you're stupid on the faces of everyone else. And meanwhile, they're just listening to you. Or maybe they're thinking about tacos, right? Like who knows? But you're going to misinterpret because that's, the glasses you have stuck on your eyeballs. And that's how you see the world. And this is how we miss things that we could do that could change our reality, right? So if your belief system starts to become healthier, you just naturally, without even thinking about it, start doing the things that will create the life that you want. So then the question becomes like, you just can't shout at people, believe in yourself. Like,
Right.
how?
So what daily practice do they do?
Two things. So there's two more stations on sort of the goat path, right? So the two things that drive a belief system are the thoughts that you regularly put through your brain, right? I'm not good enough, or I'm going to figure it out. I can't do this versus let's see how this goes, right? So whatever version of those, the negative, positive, will feed into the belief system. But then my question was, but what drives our thoughts? And that goes into the neuroscience, the three different brains we have. And what drives our thoughts are our emotions. And so and it's hilarious how hesitant and resistant adults are to naming what they're feeling. We usually go 3 words: happy, sad, mad.
Yeah.
But our brain doesn't know what to do with that. So we sit in this quagmire of like feeling about things, ourselves, our future, other people. But when you don't crystallize what are you really feeling, then our thoughts get muddled, our belief system gets kind of screwed up and unclear, so we're not too sure what to do, and we have a really fucked up world. So go all the way to like the first stop on the goat path, and here now you have, okay, my favorite thing in the whole wide world, which all my clients hate, the motion wheel. It's in the book.
There it is.
Yeah. So there's a zillion of these things online. You can get it on my website because I have lots of, free stuff that you can get there. But the idea is give it a name. When you name an emotion, you take away all of its power. And then the emotions, once you can control your emotions, or at least name them, then your thoughts become clear. Your belief system becomes more open to at least seeing opportunities out there. And then you just start naturally acting according to, the new belief system you're creating, which is believing in yourself and seeing opportunity, which creates the reality you're looking for.
So your goat path has got 8 stops on it?
5. Motions, thoughts, belief system, actions, reality.
And this is how anybody can make their goat, greatest of all time, larger than their dragon. Part of
That's
your brain.
it. It's not complicated, but that doesn't make it easy, because depending on how loud your dragon has been, that creates really deep neural pathways that are really hard to fix. They never really go away, our bad habits and our bad thought patterns, but we can learn to manage it and to control it. And that's what being a goat really is all about. It's not being emotionless. It's not about, rising above or anything like that. It is management. It's coping. We have a tolerance level. Within that tolerance is what we can handle. If we exceed the bands of our tolerance level, you either go into hyperactivity, which is stress and anxiety and freakouts, or you go into hypoactivity, which is shutdown. And what I try to do with my clients is I try to increase the width of that tolerance band so that more of what happens in life, they can manage, they can cope, they can see clearly, and they can find solutions through. So it makes kind of everything better. So their conversations with their loved ones get better, like with their kids, with their spouses, with their friends. Conversations can be had without going in there bracing for, some huge fight.
Yeah. And that's, it sounds like you were already using this system before you wrote the book.
I was some of it,
Yeah.
and some of it I was just like, "Ooh, that's really good. I should do
Yeah.
that." Right? And teaching it really helps because I'm like, I can't be a hypocrite. I can't be
Yeah.
like,
Right.
y'all should go meditate and then like don't meditate. So it's not
Yeah.
really good. So it
So it
teaches
was like
me
kind of like self-experimentation you did on yourself, right?
100%. Therapy is for the therapist as much as it is for the patient, and coaching works the same. I That's why I love it because I get personal development help by listening to my own words and working it out with them. And because I try to be like have high integrity and hypocrisy is not my, not my bandwagon. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to model this stuff so that my clients can feel like if I can do it, and I've got 4 kids and a, really solid business and I love to travel. And so I'm busy. If I can do it, they can do it.
Yeah, and that translates a lot when I teach Muay Thai, which is like kickboxing, every Friday.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And I remember when I first started teaching, I noticed a dramatic improvement in just my technique and overall like communication. Because
Mm-hmm.
remember my coach was saying was like once you start verbalizing it to other people, it's like then you're making this path in your brain. This groove
Mm-hmm.
is getting like deeper and deeper, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're telling people keep your elbow tucked in when you throw your jab, right? And you're doing that to yourself, which is also
Yep.
helping your technique, even though you might not be like doing the reps, you're
Mm-hmm.
doing the verbal reps, which is it's
Mm-hmm.
really cool to see that translate even like in the coaching world as
Yep.
one and the same.
Yep. One of the things I love, one of the ways that I know my clients have really, really sort of inculcated what I was talking about and absorbed it and have made it part of their lives when I hear that they're teaching it to others. And when
Yeah.
I hear my clients doing that, I'm like, you get it. And so some of my clients, when they talk to their own clients, are like, I'm going to Rebeccaify you. So I'm now a verb.
Yeah.
Rebeccafied.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
And I'm like,
awesome.
okay, that works. I love to be in people's heads. I love that, when they're gonna do something stupid, they're like, Rebecca, you hear my head going, don't do it. Don't do
Yeah.
it. Pull back,
do
pull back.
you do you have like any plans to write more books? I know you have
Oh
one.
yeah.
You have two right now, right?
I have 2. Yep, I've got them right back here, just very subtly displayed.
There you go.
My first book was called Think Again, my seven stage journey from self-sabotage to success. So that had 7 sort of big stages that I sort of had to go through to pull myself out of self-sabotage, which the cult really, made me a pro at, to be more successful. But since then, yeah, there it is. Yeah, that hit number 1 in 8 categories, in 6 countries. My second book, The
Nice.
Dragon and the Goat. I know, it's pretty cool. Very happy about that one. So yeah, that's the forward by Frank Kern, my mentor. Love that guy. My second book, The Dragon and the Goat, hit number 1 in 15 categories in 6 countries. It hit number 1 in Canada in 3 hours. So I was super excited about that because it's a message that people actually want to hear. And the cool thing, oh, you got to put Dragon and the Goat Rebecca Mountain because there's some guy who wrote like some cartoon thing that like totally takes over. I'm still working on the SEO for that one. It's really tough.
There
Amazon
we
is
go.
brutal. There it is. Yeah. So this book, I love this book. I like my first book. First books are always like, good go. But then you learn
Right.
a lot. And then by the second book, you're like, okay, it's more measured. It's absolutely my voice. And I organized it the way I wanted to. And as opposed to I used a publishing company to help me write the first one because I don't know how to write a bestseller. They did.
Yeah.
So, I had a lot of guidance. Whereas the second one, I used them more for like the editing and those kind of copywriting, copy proofreading. There's the word.
Proofreading.
Yeah, and helping with the cover design, and they would upload it for me on Amazon and really help to push it to get to those number ones. So yeah. So in terms of what I've got, that's I also have, and I'm just getting a Shopify account set up. So work with me. But that there is actually a journal which is called the Goat Book. So if you read the
Ah,
book in the book number 3, I'm like, get out your Goat Book, instead of notebook. And I thought that was
nice.
funny and entertaining.
Yeah.
So hang on a
Yeah.
second, I'll show it to you
Yeah.
because it's quite funny. Because of course my last name is Mountain, so it's a mountain goat.
That's amazing.
I know. So it's like
That's
2 jokes in
amazing.
one. It's a goat book, not a notebook, and it's got a mountain goat on it. Anyway,
That's
so
amazing.
I love plays on words. I love the English language. I'm a writer, clearly. So yeah. But in terms of other books, oh God, like I've
Yeah, I was
got
gonna ask what's gonna be your third book.
well, I kind of have a whole bunch of ideas. Um, one of the ideas that I have, the concept is what I call the fifth hammer. And the fifth hammer is from a story from Pythagoras. And Pythagoras was walking through a village, and he was all about like science and the math of everything. And in this particular day, he was walking through and he heard a beautiful harmony coming from a blacksmith shop. So he goes in there, and there's these five guys, and they're all like with different size hammers. But the way that they're working, it's all in a beautiful rhythm, and it creates a beautiful harmony. So he bought all the hammers, took all the hammers, went home, and tried to figure out the science of the hammers. So four of the hammers were perfect. They're symmetrical, they were mathematically perfect. And then there was this one weird outlier, the fifth hammer, which is kind of misshapen, kind of odd. So he threw it away. And then he brought the guys back and tried to get them to recreate the harmony, but it didn't work because the final piece of the harmony you required, the little misshapen, kind of doesn't look like the other's hammer. So the idea that I really want to convey, and this is kind of sparked from my autism and my son's autism, is that we're neuroatypical, but the world needs neuroatypical people in order to really operate beautifully. So instead of trying to shove everybody into these little boxes, let's find more fifth hammers that are hiding in boxes that the world creates for it. Like I hid in a box for years, right? Trying to live up to like what my dad wanted. You go to school, you get a job, you go up the ranks, retire, right? And I'm like, well, I keep getting fired, so it's a bit of a problem. So I kept getting kicked off the ladder. And I'd start from scratch every time. And there's more people like me out there that they're not happy. They have what the world would consider misshapen ideas, but we need those ideas. We need those people. The neuroatypicals, the way the world is kind of look like this. Like I don't look at the world like neurotypical people do. I don't see it. Right. That's what my husband often is like something will happen and I'm like, okay, you got to explain that to me. Cause I'm like, I want to kill everybody. And he's like, no, 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 no. That's not what happened. And then he'd have to explain like, okay. All right. Cause I couldn't get
Rebecca
it. Right.
Smash. Rebecca Smash. No, Rebecca, don't smash.
No. Rebecca Smash. Take the hammer, put it away. Yeah. So it's the whole idea of really embracing the weird, right? What looks weird, but is so essential for it. So, that's one idea for the book. Another one, I really want to write one with my son to get his perspective growing up with autism and ADD and because he does take medication because he's really incapacitated without it, and there's a stigma against that, like, oh, you're medicating your child and taking the easy route and everyone's got ADD now. And I'm like, all right, tell you what, I'm going to take him off his meds, give him to you for the weekend.
Yeah, right.
Let me know how you're doing on
Monday.
Monday. Right. Let me know, the insurance claims for the house that burned down. Right. And all the shit that he would have broken because he becomes like, I don't know, everything just goes wonky in his brain and in his body when he doesn't have that extra help. So
those
it's really
comments just come from people who don't have to live with it directly or have never had to. Right?
Yeah, exactly. But they also exposure and can create understanding. Right. And literature can create understanding. So those are the kinds of things that are just kind of like blowing around in my head. And I had another one the other day. I don't know if it's a book kind of a thing, but it's Stop Hugging the Porcupine, which is a lot of people will hold on to guilt, shame, anger, self-sabotage because that's who they are. People who are victims, right? They hold their pain close, but the closer they hold it, the more pain they actually cause themselves. And they get stuck not knowing how to release it. And that's some work that I'm continuing to do right now because I have a brilliant therapist who is helping me unravel some of the trauma from the cult that I grew up in because I held, and that's why I was so miserable for so many years because everything was beautiful around me, but I still felt pain. Why? I was holding my porcupine and I actually had a family of porcupines. So like they're like,
it's wild. That was one thing I was very surprised to learn about you. I don't think I've ever met anybody who was born and raised in a cult.
Mm-hmm.
What were you in it since you were like born, or do you remember a
No,
time that was
no.
really?
I call it my dark years, going dark. I was
Yeah,
8. When my
you were
parents
8.
joined, I was 8 years old. So prior to 8 years old, my parents were Methodist, yeah, United, and we went to church and all that kind of stuff. And it was great and cool. And we had Easter and Christmas and movies and TVs and all that kind of a thing. Um, my mother has always been worried about hell, and it frightened her. I don't know what happened, and I don't know when, but that became a prevailing fear, and it grew as she grew older. And she just met these people, and she just thought, there's the ticket, right? Ticket to heaven. Woo, away we go. They're the only ones, blah, 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 which is how you start to really understand that there's a cult at afoot, when they're like,
So it was
we're
like
the
a
only
religious.
ones.
It was
It
like a
was
religious
religious.
kind of.
Yeah. It's Christian fundamentalism. It doesn't even have a name.
Mm.
The best way of explaining it, which I found reading a Ken Follett book about England in the 1600s, is I grew up acting as if I was a Protestant being persecuted by the Catholics. So in those times in England, if you were Protestant, so Catholicism was kind of like the religion of the kingdom, and you were persecuted. So you couldn't meet in churches, so you met in homes. You didn't call your ministers ministers, you call them workers. You didn't call your congregation, a congregation, you were friends, capital F. And so all of these terms, I'm reading this fiction book and freaking the fuck out. I'm like, oh
Because
my
you're like,
God,
holy shit.
those are the words I used growing up. Like, what the?
Yeah.
And that's really the best way of describing it. So, I grew up, hair down to my waist, skirts down to my ankles, no jewelry, no makeup, no movies, no TV, very restricted music, no really friends at school. I had one. You weren't really encouraged to do that.
You still went to like
Um,
public school?
oh yeah. Oh,
Oh,
but
okay.
it was a joy to look different than everybody else,
Oh
because
yeah,
you're gonna
that was gonna be
bring.
my next question.
Yep, you were
Right.
proselytizing, but only the women. Only the women.
Mm-hmm.
Guys can, they didn't have to look different, right? They're just gonna go along, tra la la, right? So
Right.
here and again, you have the hypocrisy of it. But my mom was like whole hog into it, and so my dad really wasn't around when we were kids. He just did a lot of traveling. So if my mom was in, we were in, right? Because my mom was a little scary when
Yeah.
you
Right.
crossed her, and we were young, right? And she was so passionate about it, so we kind of adopted that passion, and then away we went. But over the years, I married into it. So my ex-husband, well, now ex-husband, was part of the church. We had children. But at a certain period of time, I'm just like, this isn't working, and there's something wrong.
Was there like a
And
final straw? Was there something that you were like, that's it?
yes, and it's the first chapter of The Dragon and the Goat. It's when I rolled
Oh,
my car on the 6-lane highway, and I did not die. And as I described in that chapter, a lot of people were like, "Woo, I'm alive!" Right? And that's like, let's have a party. But to me, I get out of my car, which was flat, shake the glass out of my hair. I was not badly injured, but I was told growing up in this church that if you even think about leaving, you're going to die one of two ways: cancer or a car crash. And I just crashed my car, and I'm not dead.
right.
So I'm like, because I had been thinking of leaving, I was very dissatisfied. They would have like a lot of these they hide really horrible people, like predators. So if one of the workers sexually assaulted someone in Alberta, they ship them to Ontario, and they would
Mhm.
live in our homes. So we have
Wow.
people, because the workers, again, which is using their term, they don't have homes. One of the titles people give us, and former cult members call ourselves the 2x2s, because all the workers go in groups of two. So two people would come, they would stay with you, eat with you, hang out with you, talk about all the spiritual stuff or whatever, try to give you advice, which was terrible because they've never lived, they've never
Right.
been married, they've never had kids, yet they're trying to dole out all this advice.
How
Anyway, so
long would
you
these strangers stay with you for? Well,
anywhere
not really
from
strangers, but
one night to 6 months.
wow.
The more
Did
money,
you
the more
have
money we make.
workers
Oh yeah.
living with you? Just
Hmm.
a
Yeah.
circle of people? Wow. Holy
Yeah. The
cow.
more money you have, the longer people wanted to stay with you.
Right.
And my parents had money. Dad ran a $4 billion steel company at the time. Anyway, so they'll, I remember sitting across from someone in these small church gatherings on Sunday morning, and I'm like, you just got out of jail for molesting your nieces. What the fuck are you doing? Like, all I wanted to do was, so you're singing all these hymns and saying all these nice things. All I'm thinking is murder, 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 murder. And then I'm feeling guilty because you're not supposed to think that in church, right? You're like, right? But at the same time, pedophiles that would go sit with the children. Everyone's like, oh, look, he's rehabilitating. I'm like, no, he's a sick motherfucker and he needs to go. Like, he's going to do something, right? And
so, you were in that at 8. When did you start
32.
Until 32? When were you like realizing you're like, okay, that seems kind of fucked up that he's spending time with children?
Oh, that was like red flag, red flag, red flag. And when there was like more and more of these instances that coming through, I started to question. So probably my late 20s. So, I had my first kid at 27, my second at 29. At that point, my marriage started to go rocky because it didn't have a lot of support. Fine guy, just never stepped up for me. And I had a lot of injuries from the birth and it was just not good. And I was miserable. But I was looking around at everybody else and they're all complaining about their husbands. And I'm like, are we all supposed to be miserable? Like, is that the MO? I don't know. Anyway, so yeah. And so into my late 30s, I start really thinking, can I do this? Can I do this for the next 50 years of my life? Can I be married to him? Can I keep going to these church things? Can I put up with the pedophiles and the rapists and the people doing horrible things, just hanging out with us, staying in my home, right? All those kinds of things. And it's not just men who were predators. There were female ministers who were just as predacious, if that's a word. I'm trying to use a different word and I think I just use the same one. But we're just as dangerous, right? When my sister got married, she married a man who was divorced, and so she was 5 months pregnant at the time. So not really. She left the church. Both my sisters left before me. My brother and my parents are still a part of it. But yeah, and the worker said, don't go to her wedding. You're condoning this behavior. So my sister didn't have my parents at her wedding. My parents didn't come to my second wedding. They came for the reception, which initially I'm just like, can't come for the whole thing? Fuck off. My husband's like, if that's what they're going to give you, take it. And so, angry me had to take the porcupine and pull out all the quills before
every quill.
I was like, fine, if you want to come, right? That's kind of how the conversation went. And they're like, oh, great. And I'm like, fine, slam, right? Yeah, kind of rocky. And it was fine. It was good to have them there in the end. But this is the kind of group that I'm talking about. And it's interesting because I actually have clients who are survivors of that cult. And I'm helping them to step out behind the fear, to live life without worrying about judgment, because everyone's so terrified of hurting other people's feelings, because that's the worst thing you could do in the world. How could you? Right?
Yeah. Is there anything that you actually miss?
Nope. Nothing.
Not a single thing.
Nope. I know, because I started that question and I'm like, okay, my assistant was like, fuck that, no. And I'm like, okay, Rebecca, hang on, stop the knee-jerk reactions, because there's my dragon, right? There's my emotional dragon going, rawr. And I'm like, no, just really think about it. But I never fit in the church either, because you're not, a woman is supposed to get married, stay home, make tomato sauce from fucking scratch, right? Cook muffin, take care of babies. That's what you're supposed to do. Well, my ex didn't make enough money. And so I went back to work. And when I went back to work.
Were they mad when you went back to work?
Oh, they were not just mad. They were very specific about the hellfire that I was bringing to my family. And I was relegating my children to hell because I was letting someone else raise my children. I'm like, y'all want to pay for my house?
I try to look at things a lot of times with the most open mind as possible, but that is some bullshit.
Yeah, that's wow. It's let's look at bullshit in the dictionary. Right.
That is an example.
And so because I didn't grow up in it, I didn't belong to the cliques, right? So trying to break into these groups of people that had grown up together, absolutely impossible. We had money and a lot of people didn't. So we were made fun of, we were ridiculed, we were rejected. People would just come over to see our house and then they would leave. And we're like, bye. Like,
Yeah.
thanks. Appreciate that.
Weird.
And so yeah, no, really nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Like nothing,
Which,
nothing. 'Cause
yeah.
I didn't belong.
That's, yeah.
So like
You just
that's
always felt like you stuck out.
yeah, and that I didn't agree, and that I was looking around going like, "Is everybody hearing this?" It's like, "Did you hear what
Yeah.
that guy said?"
Yeah.
No, no, nobody. Okay, all right, very good.
Nobody else heard? Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
all right then.
Were there
So
any like good lessons you learned other than that you could perish in a hellfire? It's not even a good
well, I
lesson.
mean, there's always good lessons. The one that I always felt like shouting at everybody is like Matthew 7:7, judge that ye be not judged. Have you read that? Anybody? Caw, caw, right?
Yeah.
So
Ads
I
are
mean,
like shunning you for getting a job to
oh,
help pay for
absolutely. Shunning me
mortgage.
for getting a job, shunning me for breathing, for doing things differently. Like if I went to the mall in a pair of pants and I saw someone from my church, I would literally have a panic attack. I
Really?
would
Just wearing
run and hide.
pants?
Just wearing pants. You're not allowed.
You had to wear like a long skirt?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Wow.
I remember someone I was playing basketball in my driveway, and one of the workers
In your
came in.
skirt?
Nope. I had a pair of jogging pants on. He pulled up, I dropped the balls and ran. And I put
Wow.
on a skirt and then I came back out because I was so afraid of judgment and of them because they would publicly shame us as well, me in particular.
Wow.
Just because it made them feel better. Like they're just sad people. So I've had to do a lot of work to not be angry at them anymore. And a lot of the work that I've done, because it's bullshit and it's hurtful and it stayed with me. It's one of the porcupines that I would hold on to. And I'm like, how much fear and self-loathing did those people need to have to be able to tell a child some of that stuff, to shame a child and to
Yeah.
think that that somehow is going to create a good behavior? So I just have compassion on them and I just feel sorry for them. And it
Well,
really
it seems like
helps.
you learned a little bit more how to have compassion for people. So I guess that's one
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean,
golden lining.
there's always good things. Like all religious texts have really good things in them. And so the way that I look at it is I have spirituality, not religion.
Hmm.
So there's certain parts of multiple types of religions that I pull from. It's kind of how I do my coaching. I'm like a multi-philosophy kind of person. I don't just take one person's training and like that's all I teach, right? Like this is my library, this is my university, right? The brick wall is fake. Those books are real, right? And I have another, bookcase over there. And so I kind of bring it in. And so I have one of the things I always say, and people say like, how did you explain leaving this cult? I said I would tell my parents or anyone that wanted to listen, which wasn't many people, there's more than one way to talk to God. And this doesn't work for me, right? I posted on this past Friday on St. Patrick's Day. That was the 15th anniversary of my car crash. And
Wow.
people who still belong to the church follow me on Facebook. And so I'm writing about this and I just had a little blurb. I know there's people that follow me. This is not judgment. If it works for you, knock yourselves out. My experience was different. And then I just carried on with my message because a lot of fun, X 2x2s, which is what people call us, they struggle with how to talk to people still part of the religion. I don't. And that's part of my goatness, which is say what I believe. I'm not here to make everyone else feel comfortable. I'm here to make myself feel comfortable. And that's the only way that we need to operate. It's not selfish. It's not mean because again, the tenets of what I'm trying to live up to are good. I'm trying to be as good a person as I can, honest, high integrity, trustworthy, kind, all those kinds of things. But I'm not nice because nice is basically, it's covering up the truth. And I always tell my clients, y'all are being too nice, right? Because they do recruiting or they have clients of their agents that work in their brokerage that aren't performing. And if they come in and you have, your heart to heart and you're like, why aren't you performing? And they're like, well, I just really got busy. And then you're like, okay, do better. That's being
Yeah.
nice. Being
Right.
kind is, roll the same tape. Agent comes in and you're like, here's the minimum performance level. Let's be clear. This is what's necessary. If you want to stay, you kind of have to live up to this. So you either choose to do this or we help you find somewhere else that's more conducive to how you're put together. Clear? good. And
Yeah,
that's kind.
it's a good way to approach it. Is like it's always like if you were my best friend Mike. Right? I've grown up with Mike my whole life,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes you gotta say stuff to your friend that maybe hurts his feelings or their
Mm-hmm.
feelings, but the honest truth is always better than
Mm-hmm.
just covering it with sparkles and fairy dust and being
Yes.
like everything's okay. You know, like
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever had to argue with Mike or say anything negative. I love that guy very much, but I just am
Mm-hmm.
just using him as an example.
Yeah.
Just
I actually
that
use the
fine line. That
yeah,
fine
it
line,
is. It is a fine line, but it is one of the most important lines because a lot of the nicest people in the world are physically the sickest. Because there's a book I read called The Myth of Normal, and it says it's about addiction, but it's about way more than that. But the people who, when they did studies and they came in and they were the sunniest and they were the hi, hi, you look lovely, blah blah blah, I love your hair. They're the ones that physically are the most ill because all of these big emotions they hide, right? They push and they shove it
right?
down and they're like, don't feel it, right? Like in the book, I talk about Unikitty, right? From the Lego movies. I love Lego movies. Anyway, Unikitty is just like, like everything is great and everything is positive and everything's like blowing up. And she's like trying to be positive and like, it's all great, like bubble gum.
Yeah.
And then eventually she just loses her shit, which I love. I love angry Unikitty. It's like, there you go, girl, let her
Yep.
out.
Let the
Right?
emotions out.
Exactly. So, in the book, there's actually a chapter called Shit to Fertilizer. And that's taking shitty situations and not spraying it with glitter because it still stinks or runs through your fingers, really gross. You're still holding on to it. And that's thinking positive. What you need to do, and this is what I did to create the compassion so that I don't feel pain about my history and my trauma, is you take that shit and you put it in the ground and you grow something better from it. So
Amen.
from the pain, I grew compassion and I grew an ability to see other people's traumas and help them to let go of the pain of the trauma itself.
That that is exactly the reason why I left retail.
Mm,
Exactly the reason why. Quick story, I was assistant store manager to a really great company. They were always nice to me, but I was told that one of the store managers were leaving. He's going to change to a different store, and when he left, that they were going to give me the store. They were going to put me in position. And I was excited. I was pumped. The first time in my life I worked retail since I was 17. I was like, holy cow, I have the opportunity to run a store. This is going to be awesome.
yeah.
Fast forward to 2 months. They end up hiring an older guy that was the
Oh,
district manager for
no.
Home Depot or something. And I was shattered. And I think I was shattered more because like it was told to me that it was given to me and then it just didn't
They took
happen.
it away.
Yeah, but
Oh.
I remember driving home and like clenching my steering wheel so tight because I was so
Hmm.
pissed off.
Hmm.
And when I got home, my wife said to me, she was like, well, maybe retail, maybe you need to get out of retail. Maybe you need to find something different. And I was
Hmm.
like, I think I was holding on to retail for so long because it was the only thing I ever knew when I was 17 and I was like
Sure.
decent at it. So I was
Hmm.
afraid to kind of like step out. But
Yeah.
had that moment never happened, it would never have pushed me into real
Hmm.
estate.
Yep.
Had
We
that
have
shit
those.
never
Yep.
happened, I would
You're
have
right.
never used that fertilizer in real estate.
Hmm. Hmm. And
And
you
I
use all the stuff from your retail in real estate, almost
right.
guaranteed, right?
Right. It's the same thing, just on a see with when I was in retail, it's customer service on a broader level. Like it's
Hmm.
more generic. I'm seeing a higher volume of people. In
Hmm.
this business, I can work more intimately with somebody. And
Hmm.
it's always a big moment in somebody's life, whether it's positive or negative. Could be divorce, diapers, diamonds, dis disagreements. Like it could be 100 different reasons, right?
Hmm.
And the ability to be there to help somebody is what helps me wake up every morning excited to do
Yep.
this job. And had that shit moment not happened, I would have had no fertilizer to help
Hmm.
me grow into real estate.
Hmm.
Really funny that you said that. Wow.
I'm
Wow.
glad. I'm glad because I mean, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Not everyone has those volcanic moments like you and I, right? The car crash for me, that moment of, being passed over and just deciding like, no, like I don't need to do this. And like with my agency, now my agency came after the car crash, but it was the same thing. I was good at it, but I'm
Yeah.
like, but I don't like it. And there was no sort of catalytic moment where I'm like, oh my God, I need to, change it up. I just remember, sitting there going, it doesn't have to be this way. I don't, I, if I can reject the cult, I can reject my current way of life because I'm creating it so I can change it. And then the pandemic was just really helpful because everyone wants to fire a marketing agency when the, really big crises come
Yeah.
along. And I'm like, well, guess that's that.
Yeah, right.
So
Right.
now what am I
You
going
must
to
have
do?
been so terrified, not only just surviving a car
Mhm.
crash, but also being like, you know what? I'm done. Because in the back of your mind, you must have known that it was like going to damage a lot of relationships that you've
Yep.
had.
Yep. I expected my parents to disown me, disinherit me, turn me away because my sisters had left as well, but like I'm going out in flames, right?
Yeah.
Because I have
Yeah.
children. I
And
am
I survived a
married.
car crash, bitches.
Pew, 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 pew. Yep, exactly. Right. Got my little laser fingers and all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. Yeah. And the other thing you have to understand is growing up in this cult, I didn't know how the world worked. I didn't know how to get a mortgage. Because remember, I'm a woman. So
You
you
didn't
don't
touch any of that.
nope.
Right.
Right? I'm not really good with money. I am now, but I wasn't back then anyway. So that means part of it was my own fault. But I'd never ordered cable. So I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to buy a house. I didn't know how the world worked. And so not only was I leaving the teeny tiny bit of support I had, right? I was going out into a world that I didn't understand. I didn't
Yeah.
understand any of it. And
Right.
also, I lost my job because I worked for people in the church and they kind of didn't side with me. So they're like, bye, ping, away
See
you
ya.
go. So I left the church in August. I was separated by October, divorced by December, living on my own by Christmas. And I was unemployed by January the 12th.
The
So I took
whirlwind,
myself on a
6 months.
vacation. Yeah.
What? No,
Yeah.
4 months.
hmm
Wow.
So the car crash was March. By the end of March, I'm like, I don't think I can do this anymore. And I started having those conversations with my ex. I'm like, this isn't working. We can't be together. I can't keep going to church. I can't keep doing this stuff. Right. And we were back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. By August, I'm like, I'm just not going, and I don't care what you say. Take the kids if you want. I'm staying home. I'm not doing this anymore. So there now, and it took me a long time because he has acute anxiety disorder. And one of the worst things with people like that is to be alone. Right? And the
Mhm.
also fun part of that is if you abide the letter of the law of the cult I belonged into, if I divorce him, he cannot marry until I'm dead.
What?
Yep. That's
Wow.
the rule. So
That's
it took
crazy.
me a while, right, to be able
Yeah.
to be like, can I do this to him? And at the
Yeah.
end of the day, and I'm like, not my problem. I don't live
Right.
by those rules anymore.
Yeah.
And so, fast forward like 5 or 6 years after that, he starts dating again. And I'm like, great, good for you. Like, and then he got engaged, and I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, do I need to go into hiding?
Yeah.
Right? Is he gonna do
Oh,
it? Is he gonna do it? Right. So I survived an imaginary assassination.
yeah. A car crash and an imaginary assassination.
Yeah, well, could have been. So thankfully he kind of ditched that rule, and I'm like, woof. Yeah, so no, so he's married and hopefully living his best life. I'm remarried. I'm definitely living my best life. The boys don't go to that church anymore. At 14, Derek, my ex, was let my oldest son not go because he really wasn't into it. Of course, it's again all my fault, but I don't care.
Right.
And then my younger son, who would have been 12, like 11, 12 at the time, he's like, oh, peace out, I'm not going either. And Derek's like, no, you have to wait till you're 14. And Zach was like, no, I don't.
No.
Just wouldn't go. That's why I love my kid. He's just like, again, with autism, you don't really worry. The empathy button's a little bit, not like kind of on the fritz for that one. And
He's
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 like,
like 12 or 13, you said?
at the time, yeah, he's
Yeah.
17 now.
Yeah. He's
So
like, "You
yeah, it was
guys
just
have
funny.
girls in jogging pants. I'm leaving. See ya."
Mhm. Peace. I'm out, and then since then he's come out as gay, which of course that is like, like we had to
Yeah,
talk about like
that's a
how
whole
he's going to
thing too.
talk to his dad and, how everyone's going to handle it, and like my parents are still a part of it. It's really cute. I'll tell you this, tiny story about like my parents have kind of come along and kind of relax some of the authoritarian way of with what they raised me. So they'll watch some movies and they'll have the odd drink and stuff like that. So I went to visit them this summer, just me. And my dad gets up and he's wearing this shirt and he's got these little tags on it. And it's the LGBTQ rainbow. Like, so it's like all like the colors of the rainbow and then like all the blues and the browns and stuff like that. And I'm like, Dad, do you know what that means? So, like,
Oh,
because
I just like rainbows, Rebecca.
yeah, no, he's like, no, I'm wearing it because I'm supporting your son. And I'm like,
Whoa.
exactly. And I'm like,
Whoa.
what the what? Right. And so like this is like people can be a part of these weird cultist things and not be as authoritarian. I can't have certain conversations with my parents because it's just they're not going to go. Like they're not going to
Yeah.
accept anything. I could show them whatever, clips I wanted of debates people have. It's not going to change anything. And to me, have an
Yeah.
expectation that they're going to change is ridiculous. So a lot of what the work I've also done, and this has helped again, when people go through trauma and pain, you got to start managing your expectations. Like my parents will never come visit me again because they've told me so, right? They say they're old or whatever. And I'm just like, don't worry about it. So if I kept holding on to like, oh no, but if I beg them and if I do this, maybe they'll come, I'm just hurting myself. So I just
Yeah.
changed my expectations. I'm like, all right, I'll be able to see you once a year because they live in Winnipeg and in Canada, it costs like a small fortune to fly anywhere. All the costs up here are ridiculous. Our taxes are nuts. Go liberals.
Yeah.
So this is not a political conversation. We'll leave that for another day. Dragons really yelled, no, say it. So so you just gotta manage the expectations because if you know what people can give you, and that needs to be enough for you. So yeah, do I wish I had more of a close relationship with my parents? Sure, but you know what, I have pretty fucking amazing in-laws. And they want like every copy of my book and they give it to all their friends and they talk about me and they're like, blah, blah, blah. And, they're just really great. So what I can't get from one area, I can get from somewhere else. And that becomes enough for me. But the biggest work I've done is that I'm enough for me. And this is where when you can say that yourself, when you do not need someone else to tell you you're doing a good job, you don't need an award, especially in real estate, right? Because it's all like, all the awards, basically everyone knows what everyone's making, right? Which I think is ridiculous. But anyway, because it should be nobody's business, but
Yeah.
real estate, it's everyone's business, right? But if all of those are like cool, and then you carry on, but it's like an extra, it's not needed, then you're really getting into your goatness, like your goat life, because you have decided that what you bring to the table is enough, not only for you, but for everybody else. And if they don't like it, it's not about you, which all my American clients love when I say, because I say about, and this sounds very Canadian. I don't know how Americanized that, right? They're like, oh, say it again. I have one client who like recorded me and every time she wanted to laugh, she'd play, it's not about you. And I'm like, oh my God.
God dang it.
There you go.
Oh man, that was, we didn't even touch on like all your public speaking stuff. How much longer do you got? Do you got to run?
No. I don't think so. Hang on,
you got a little bit longer?
Hang on. Please hold. Where am I? Yeah, I got another
I've
half
already
hour.
got you for like an hour.
Yeah, I got another half hour.
Okay, well, just real quick, because I saw you at rewind the tape back like 6 months ago. You were at the Howard Hanna the convention, and you had a presentation about your book, which was really great, and you also touched on the cult stuff, but like public speaking is that's like a big thing. That's like there's two fears in everybody's world, right? It's death and public speaking, right?
Yep.
So how did you overcome those jitters?
So I started overcoming my public speaking problem in university. So in university, I was in biz school, and I knew that I was smart enough to know that public speaking and talking in front of other people was an essential skill, and I sucked at it. right? Like I'd sit in the front of the class, like, and I couldn't even read my presentation. And I'm like, girl, you gotta figure this out. So one of the things I did is I forced myself into situations in which I had to do public speaking. So I would join case competitions. And at the end of the weekend, like you get a case, you have to solve the case and then present it to a panel of judges. Right? The first year I did it, I was in second year. We were up against third and fourth years, and we won. Me and my partner, we got first prize. We couldn't believe it. Like they would have like 5 prizes. We didn't get 5, 4, 3, and 2. We're like, wow, we must have really sucked. Right? And then they announced us as winning. So all the fourth years were like mad. And I'm like, bitches. But I said nice, like, oh, good for you. Because I was still part of the cult at the time. When I left university, I had a fantastic manager who wrecked me for all my future managers. He said, what's one thing you want to get good at? And I'm like, I need to get good at public speaking. So he said, okay, I'm going to put you in charge of lunch and learns. I don't have to teach them, but I have to organize them. I have to introduce, and structure. And he's going to sit at the back and he's going to take notes. And then we're going to go over it. So I kept putting myself into positions where I would force myself to stand in front of people and be articulate. And then, fast forward. So that was my first job. And I didn't really do public speaking after that. But when I went and I started my social media agency, it just started being a huge opportunity because I started my social media agency when it was still a blue ocean, right? It's 2010. Facebook was only 4 years old.
Yeah.
And so,
I think you needed a college email to get in at that point still.
Yeah, pretty well. Yeah. So it was really new. And so I was in high demand. And one of the things that I learned very, very early on is only speak about things you really know. Because I did one gig where someone said, can you talk to people about websites? And I'm like, okay. Oh, and it was one of those like Bart Simpson, as long as there's no follow-up questions, everything is fine, right? Yeah. But I was in terror that someone would think, can you please explain how SEO works? And I'd be like,
I didn't have this prepared.
I'm gonna barf, right? So I stick to only the things I know really, really well. And I practice like a motherfucker. Like I practice and practice and practice the half hour before I go on stage. Even though I might have done this presentation, like when I was doing the Howard Hanna tour, I did that same speech 7 times in 10 days.
Oh, wow.
And yep. And I would still go through it. I'd be backstage. I'd be going through my deck. What story am I telling? I tell that story. Next slide. This story, next slide. This story, next slide. Go back again. Go through it again until it becomes so rote to me that there's nothing but pure joy in delivery because I worry about forgetting stuff. I have what I'm called an untrained memory. So we're working on training me to be more confident with remembering stuff. So, that preparation is really what's necessary. And honestly, if you know your stuff, you're just talking about what you love. And I love this stuff. Like I love dragon and the goat stuff. And I, as you can see, can talk for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, about it.
For one presentation that you're doing for, I think the Howard Hanna one was about an hour. How much time of prep work goes into that?
Well, I wrote a whole book first.
Yeah, right.
Really what it comes down to is when you create it. So let's talk about keynotes because there's keynotes, breakouts, and workshops, right? There's 3 different levels. So anyone getting into public speaking, you usually have to do the workshop breakout circuit a couple of times before you get into keynote status, or you need to like write a book or have like a really compelling story to get into like the keynote area. There's a fantastic book actually for anyone thinking of getting into public speaking called The Referable Speaker. It's an easy read and it is super helpful at helping people. So again, it's called The Referable Speaker. It's got a black cover.
Place to write that down. Yeah. Referable Speaker. Did it show you like different techniques and stuff?
Yep. It showed you how to get into breakout circuit, but how to break out of the breakout circuit and get into keynote. It talks about the different kinds of keynotes that are out there. There's like celebrity, there's, people who are like super mega authors, like the Seth Godins of the world. But then there's what are called the surprise and delight. Like I don't have celebrity, but I have a surprise and delight kind of a message that a lot of people are looking for. So it's a matter of understanding where you fall in the kind of presentation you're doing and creating it. So the basics of a keynote, and again, it's all outlined in that book. Like you start off with a really compelling story. I was the big change, like, because I delivered my keynote before without the crash story at the beginning, and it was like, it was good, but it was like, it wasn't like riveting. So then through the book, and I had a presentation coach, we're like, got to throw like some pivotal, life-changing, really sort of volcanic event. I have to talk about it. So I'm like, okay, so then you put that story, so you get people interested, you get the empathy flowing, you get emotions getting up. You talk a little bit about some of the background. So I went into the neuroscience, like what is a dragon? What is the goat? I talked about my goat path. And then it's strategies, because people always want to walk away with something useful. Oh, I can do that. So I had like the 5 dragon shrinking strategies. I had the 5 goat feeding strategies, and then, that was the presentation. So that's really the essence of a keynote. It's storytelling. Breakouts are how to. Keynotes is story, 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 with a little bit of strategy kind of filtered in, because, the event organizers always want to say, what are people going to walk away feeling? What tools are they going to walk away being able to use that they haven't been able to use before? And so on. So keynote speaking is really profitable because A, you can charge good money for it. And B, you get referrals to other places, right? So I did I did my keynote here for a company called Conagra, to their sales and marketing and finance VPs and all that kind of a thing. Met with a guy on Monday because he's like, okay, I need you to come to my company, do the presentation, but let's do some workshopping and let's have some coaching involved as well. So you can expand your ability to make money from these keynotes by having something that you can offer afterwards, whether it's a monthly program or coaching, like one-on-one, or group stuff, or like whatever. There's a thousand different ways you can make money with it, but books don't make money. Books open doors to opportunities to make money. So without the book, I don't get the keynote. Without the book, I don't have the coaching. Without the book, I don't have, the methodologies, the reason to do this, right? So, and it's a lot easier to write a book than people think.
Yeah.
I wrote that sucker in 3 days.
3 days. Now,
3 days.
You did tell me you locked yourself in a cabin.
I did. Right? Yep. So I spent the whole time to write that book was 4 months. Well, kind of 3.5. So for the first 3.5 months, I wrote the outline, right? So I want to say this in chapter 1. I'm going to use this book reference. I'm going to use this quote. So I would, go through all of my books for supporting literature and supporting points, and I would map it all out, right? So I had all my chapters, all of my different sections. And then I took all my books, stuck them in a bag, drove to a cabin in the woods for the long weekend of September, locked myself in, and wrote. So I wrote 9 hours on the first day, 12 hours on the second day, 11 hours on the third. But I was done.
Damn.
60,000 words.
Damn, Rebecca. I feel like I would be done after the first hour. I'll be like, all right, let's go fishing or something.
Right. You know what? When you go there, like it's all about intention. Like I went there with the intent, I'm doing nothing but writing. And my husband came with me, and I'm like, I'm not talking to you like for most of the day. You're going to have to like wander off and entertain yourself. And he's like, sounds cool. Right. So, when you go with the intent of like, holy shit, I need to get this thing done. I had initially hoped to get it out for Christmas, but it didn't come out till February, but it was close. But it's what I love. Right. And it's the opportunity of, cause I wrote one book and I saw how much money I can make from that. And I'm like, if I want to go make another couple $100,000 from one book by getting speaking gigs and people ordering my book, like someone yesterday ordered 20 copies, right? Another conference, the conference in February bought 100. My conference in June bought another 100, right? Wow. And so like my book gets around, and so I need to get this done. I want to get this message out there. I was really passionate about it. And you can do anything. Like Bill O'Hanlon, who weirdly I found a connection so I could talk to him. He wrote Do One Thing Different and 40 other books. So he's like superstar guy, and talked to me about it. And he was the same. He's like, yeah, it takes me 4 to 6 months to write a book. That's it. You get into a process. So it's like when I was in high school writing an essay, you do your research, you create the outline, you slot your research and your resources into whichever chapter works. You throw in a story. So either a story of myself, but because I've had enough years, I threw in stories of my clients, right? Because this is not just my success. This is their success by practicing
Right.
these things. So it's not just the me show, and then whether it's over 3 days or 3 weeks or 3 months, you just write it out. Like even if you just do a chapter a week, right? Everyone's got a pace. I'm psycho and I'm like, let's get it on,
Let's
right?
get
And
it done in
then
a weekend.
yep. And I
Wow.
was not going to leave that cabin until that book was written, and I didn't.
Was the idea behind the book just to help grow? I don't like the word brand. It feels weird, but the Rebecca Mountain brand was just to help
Yeah.
stretch a little bit.
It is because I need people to know what kind of coach I really am. And
who you are as a person too. That book gives great
bingo.
insight on that.
Yeah, and because there's a relatability that I want people to have. And not everyone grows up in a cult, right? But a lot of people have grown up in oppressive relationships, racism. There's oppression in different countries. Like say someone grew up somewhere where there was like political oppression and they're still holding on to that. So the reaction is the same, the cause may be different. And so I needed people to know there's hope and there's a way out and there's strategies you can use. And here's like 40 different ways that you can start really fixing your life, and you have the ability to do so. And so like I'm all about do shit. Like one of your questions was about my podcast, which is really honestly, it's okay, but it's kind of lame because I have an idea for the podcast I really want to do, which is called the Do Shit Show, right? Because
Yeah.
I'm about do shit and it's a show and shit show's funny. Anyway, so, it's like goat book to play on words. Everything I do is predicated around how do I get people to stop planning and worrying and regretting and start doing, because you got to get through those barriers to action in order to actually get forward momentum. Like we're the ones that hold ourselves back, and everyone says it like, oh, it's holding me back is me, blah blah blah. And I'm like, yeah, but what about you exactly? And drilling into that so we can pull it away. And so these are the kinds of things that when I look at all the things I want to do, my do shit show is one of them, and it'll happen. That's my April project.
Well, that's what this podcast was. It was literally, before I even started this, was like 4 months of me going deep into the technology and what programs I should use and how do I stretch my reach and how do I do this? And I'm like, it got to a point where I remember I had talked to my manager at the time, Shauna, and I told her that I wanted to start a podcast. And then like 4 months go by and she's like, I haven't seen an episode. Are you still doing your podcast? I go, yeah, I'm researching this thing. And she's like, why don't we just do one right now? And I'm like, but I don't have the technology. I got to figure it out on my computer. She goes, you have a mic. And I go, yeah.
Oh, I like her.
She's like, do you want to just do one right now? And I'm like, yeah, sure. So my first episode with Shauna was like her basically convincing me just to record it and get it done and out there, because I kept just like trying to prepare. And at some point I just had to like pull the rug and just get it going. And it's literally I had not stopped ever since I've done it now. And it's funny that it's like you get so in your head that you're like, everything has to be perfect. But guess what? The first time you do anything is gonna be dog shit.
Yep.
First time you paint is gonna be dog shit. The first time you try knitting is gonna be dog shit. But if you don't just do it, you're never gonna get better, right?
Nope. You got it. And that's where motivation and confidence come from, right? Which again I talk about in the book. Don't wait for it. It's that everyone's waiting at that bus stop. Don't wait there because everyone else is there. They're like, it's never going to come if you're just waiting. Well, I'll do it when I feel motivated. I need to build my confidence. But all of those build once you start moving towards something, even if it's dog shit, right?
Right.
So, because the next time you do it, it'll be better and better and better and better. So yeah, you got it.
Is there an event that you have wanted to speak at that you haven't had the chance to yet? Is there like the golden,
the golden nugget?
Yeah.
I was thinking about that question. And I'm like, is there like the grand poobah of conferences? And honestly, there isn't. Because every conference to me is an opportunity to reach more people. I'd love to speak in front of 10,000 people, That'd be fun. I don't care where that is.
What's the
Right.
biggest group you've talked in front of?
2,500.
Oh God, that scares me.
Yeah, I
The
know,
biggest
right?
I've done is like 30, 40 people, maybe.
Yeah, well, the Howard
Jesus,
Hanna
that's
ones.
not good.
Which location were you at? I can't remember. Were you Syracuse?
Liverpool. Yeah, Syracuse. Yep.
Right. So that was 800 people there.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but I mean, you end up having fun with it because I don't know if you remember, but a woman sneezed 3 times. And I was just
Yes.
like, bless you, bless you. And I'm like, oh, now, okay, now you just want attention.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just fun. Like you
Yeah.
learn to have fun with it and just kind of roll with it and have a really fucking good time. And whether it's 2 people or 2,000, somebody needs to hear what you have to say. And you don't have to convince everybody to listen to you. Someone's going to fall asleep. Someone's going to be on their phone. Someone's going to walk out, whatever,
Yeah.
hopefully they don't make too much noise. Someone's reading a newspaper. Someone's just
Yeah.
like yapping at their friend. Let them go. I used to try to like focus on those people. I'm like, I will convince you. No, I'm just
Yeah.
like, fuck you. I'm going to talk to
Yeah.
this guy. Right. Because
I had
they're
that
going to
happen.
kick your ass.
Yeah, I had that happen to me. I presented at a NISAR event. They had a speaker that was supposed to talk about cybersecurity or something, and she ended up having a family emergency. So they had me come in and talk about social media. And I had in the very front row, like this room was, that was the largest group I taught in front of. It was like 40 people. And there was
Okay.
this older dude that
No.
sat in the front row, and he was like sitting with his hands on his belly like this. And he's like, I could see it happening as I was presenting. He was like fighting it off.
Yep. Yeah.
And finally he passed out. I was so like, I was nervous and worried about presenting well because it was my first time in front of like a larger group of people,
Yeah.
that I was just like, I don't want to like draw attention that he's sleeping. But in my head, I'm like, wake up. Are you kidding me? Am I that boring? Wake up.
Yeah. I used to threaten people, and I'm like, I want to make sure you keep your attention. I'm entertaining but educational. If you fall asleep, I'm taking a picture and I'm posting it on social media. You've been warned.
That's what I should have
No one
done.
fell asleep.
Taking a selfie.
Yay. Yeah, I had someone, I was speaking, there's probably about like 500 people in the room. So again, social media was new, standing room only. There's these long tables. And this guy, I shit you not, face down on the arms, sawing logs. And I'm like, I hope this is entertaining. This guy doesn't think so, right? But that's okay. He's having a really good sleep. You guys can let him know that I mentioned that when he wakes up. And everyone's like, ah, right? But my best, I'll show you this presentation. Like, presentation's gone wrong. Oh my God. So this was back like again, God, like 8-9 years ago. And it was a Toronto real estate board training class on Facebook. And I was talking about images, and how you can't just use someone's image in an ad. You have to use your own, blah, blah, blah. But if you're just doing a post, you can go to Google Images, and I'm like, give me something, so someone said horses on a beach. And I'm like, great. So I typed horses on a beach. And then I clicked it. So say, like, here's how to find the source. So I clicked it and I walked away, right, from my computer. Now the screen is behind me. My computer is now behind me. And this 90-year-old dude, I swear, his eyeballs were like popping out of his head. He was like, what? And I'm looking at everybody. Everyone's looking in absolute horror at what's on the screen. And I'm like, if I turn around, that's not horses on a beach, is it? And they're like, no, it was porn. I was playing porn.
Oh, no.
It was like, how did we get from horses like galloping along a beach to this? I'm like, diving for my computer. Anyway, so I'm just like, right. Carrying on. Horses, it was a 3-hour class. And the guy, when he left, he shook my hands like, that was the best class I've ever been at. I really hope you come back. And I'm like, I really hope I don't.
Yeah.
I hope you guys never see me again.
I feel like if that happened to me, every time I went to present after that, I would be thinking to myself, well, at least I'm not going to show them porn again. Right? Like,
it's
like what's worse than that?
Exactly. I'm just like, I'm just going to pick the image myself. I'm not going to let anybody choose anything. Oh my God. That was the absolute best. I've also had people argue with me on stage. Right. So I was doing a thing on social media and I was talking about Instagram and this girl's like, no, you can't do that. And I'm like, actually, sister, you can. But if you want to argue with me about this later, we can take it up. And she kept going. And I'm like, sweetie, you probably have great points. But like, I'm just going to keep on going. And then you find me afterwards and we can sort of hash this out.
Yeah.
Fuck, man. I'm like, I don't need hecklers in the front row. But people
hecklers
are like,
at like you're already nervous enough. You don't need people
No.
regurgitating and yelling at you.
Yeah, exactly. Because of course, then I start questioning myself and I'm like, is this right? Is this wrong? And I'm like, no, I think you're wrong. But you know what? I'm not going to worry about this because I have my presentation. And turned out I was right. She was wrong. So naturally, she didn't come see me after because I really would have liked to have laughed at her.
Yeah,
Right. But,
right.
you know, in the nicest way possible. But, you know, the
That's
mean
funny.
part of me would be like, you embarrass yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's lots of things that can happen when you get on stage and you never quite know. Like in Syracuse, you know, Carlton introduces me as a Chiefs fan right after the Bills Chiefs game. I'm like, oh, that's nice. I'm now going to get
Yeah.
like, you know, like target quartered.
Yeah.
You know, so that's just fantastic because that can throw people off, right? Because you think,
Yeah.
you know, someone's going to introduce you in a certain way. Mercifully, I know Carlton, so I'm just like, because we've been friends for 10 years, you know, so you know, but if you know your stuff, nothing will throw you off, and use humor and be just you, like you to a T. Do not ever try to be somebody else. I'm like me times 10 when I'm on stage. Like I'm pretty energetic and crazy and stuff like that. But when I'm on stage, you know, I'm like kicking my legs up and I'm like woohooing and that kind of a thing. Because that's me. That's also why I wear running shoes and not high heel shoes, because I would probably twist an ankle and die.
Yeah, more comfort. And also the shoes, believe it or not, does show your personality too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know?
And also shows that I have 47-year-old knees.
Yeah.
Busted. Oh, well, what are you going to do? How we all age gracefully.
This is Rebecca, this has been great. Thank you so much for taking almost an hour and a half of your time to talk to me. I really appreciate it. Do you have anything else that you want to plug or anything that you have coming up?
Well, I'm always looking for stages, right? So the more places and opportunities I have to share. So if any of your listeners are like, wow, this would be really good here, there, or the other, let me know, right? Like I'm not a snob. It doesn't have to be 2,000 people. I'm happy to talk to 20 people. You know, so in terms of plug, there's my plug. That's the only thing I really would plug, other than I would really love for everybody to read that book. Not because I'm trying to hit, you know, some magical bestseller number, although nice.
That
What
would be
I'm
nice.
more interested in is people having an opportunity of starting to, you know, lessen the voice and the intensity of the dragon and start designing a life that you actually want, because it is possible for everyone. No one is stuck. It'll take a certain amount of time, but if you have an idea and at least you see that it's possible, then you have a chance. So I really just want to spread the message. The only other thing I will say, a lot of like adults who buy the book give it to their children, their adult children, because especially in late teens and early 20s, they're making such big decisions and they're lost. And these books can really help to organize the thoughts of our young adults and to help them to kind of make choices based on who they are, not who society thinks that they should be, or try to shove themselves into one of the prescribed boxes that they believe are out there for them. They don't have to be in a box. They can create something new and fresh. So that's the only thing that I would really love, is for this to be able to reach the young adult market. I am, you know, currently really trying to partner with some universities and some colleges so I could teach, like, you know, a session to the kids, so they can have a little bit more hope.
Yeah, that's great. And what we'll do too is in the show description, if it's on YouTube or whatever podcast app you may be listening to, if you go to the show description below, we'll put Rebecca's website, social media links, and a link to both of her books, so you guys can get in touch with Rebecca. I've thought the presentation you did at Howard Hanna, the meeting was awesome. It was fantastic. I thought it was moving. I thought it was really eye-opening. So thank you for your time. You're a wonderful human being, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you. And you're a wonderful human being, because I follow you on the Instagram, right?
On the gram, as the kids say.
The gram. Yeah, which makes me just feel like the gram. And I'm just like, so I don't say the gram because I'm like, ooh. It just doesn't like, it's like, that's sick. No, Mom. No, that's cringe what you just did.
Mom, we don't say that. Mom, no cap. That's embarrassing.
No cap? I don't even know what that means. I don't even.
Before we end it, I'll tell you just one funny story, and then we're gonna cut it off. So the other day, I was at my office. I got like open house signs or something, and I'm walking them out to my car. And as I'm walking them out to my car, there's a group of teenagers walking home from school, and they're like out front of the building. And I open the door. I go, hey, you guys need help with anything? What do you guys need? And they're like, no, sir. We're just looking for a pen. And I went, oh, yeah, sure. No problem. And as I start to walk away, they
said,
start
"Sir."
speaking another language that I have never heard before. For real, swear on God, no cap. That pen be bussin'. And over, I'm like, what does all of this slang mean? And I then got in my car and I cried for about 2 minutes that I have realized that I'm older and I am no longer cool and hip.
Yes. When all the kids come home from university in the summer and they're all sitting around the kitchen table, they're talking, and I said to my husband, like, what's happening? Like,
I can't follow a conversation anymore.
No, and then they'll say something, and then they'll all start laughing. So clearly, it's not something good. And I'm like, should I? They're like, nope, don't look it up, Mom. Don't look it up. No, and I won't. I'm like, okay, I won't look it up. They're like, it'll gross you out, or it'll be disgusting, or like, it's just don't. It's just, depending on how effusively they say don't, I'm like, you guys will do. Yep.
Well, on God, no cap, this podcast be bussin'. For real. I've never ended a podcast that way, but that's how it's going to happen.
I didn't even know what to say. I'm like, yay, that's sick. I think the sick is old. Oh, well, whatever.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of the Cory Cast. I really appreciate the time that you spent listening and even listening to the full episode to get you to this point. I just want to say I'm just so appreciative and so thankful that I have so much love and support for these episodes. If you want to be a guest on this podcast, reach out to me. I'm always looking for new people. Let's talk about what you're passionate about. Let's talk about your hobbies. Let's give you a positive platform to talk about the things that matter to you. Do me a favor, make sure you hit subscribe, like, follow, leave a review of the podcast. All those little things will help this podcast grow, because without you guys, there is no podcast, and I am just so grateful that you're taking the time to listen to it today. Thank you so much.